We do it with the music. Hello, Demi. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Brooklyn here, London there. So another fine morning here in Brooklyn. A little bit chilly. We
Yeah.
without coordination, we dressed in Ukrainian colors, and I did it without much thinking too. But this is what I had on hand, and seeing that the season is already a little bit shifting,
Yeah.
it's so this is how it came to be. How is everything on your side of the pond?
Well, the state of Britain is in something of a state. Everybody is sort of running around flapping their hands like, what happened? A lot of people are saying it's the EU that's having a go at Britain because they still haven't forgiven Brexit. And then there's also talk of deep state sabotaging Liz Truss's and Kwasi Kwarteng's view of how to manage our financial position. And then, of course, like with the rest of Europe, we're running short of gas, we're supposed to be, and prices are going up. And I filled my car the other day, and the person at the petrol pump cash thing gave me a price, and I said, I don't know how you could tell me that with a straight face. and well, so it goes.
Yeah, here we also struggle with the same stuff, and New York is a strange place in a way that we hear in the news that people are, say, struggling with filling the gas tank, and some of people here. I'm a driver. I haven't set my foot in the subway for years, I must say. I'm a driver. I know I drove in Manhattan a lot, and I know some what I call them pockets of resistance where I can park for free, and I don't mind walking an extra block or two for that because prohibitive price of parking in Manhattan is well known. But the people are kind of in New York are not united with the problem. Some say, yeah, it's too expensive. Some say, no, we don't have a car, so we don't care. We don't have kids, so we don't care about education. And this is my kind of political whiff, what I'm doing these days.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking, and the smart heads and people who are in a pretty, I shall say, tragic position in a way, historically. I mean, history kind of puts such a label on people like that. They say what unites us is higher thought, something we don't think about every day. And in this situation, it's nothing but make America great again. And another interesting thing that I think I can share with you here and with the audiences here is that mm, conservatives, Republicans, by nature are not, how shall I say, they don't offer like crazy stuff. They offer things that are tried and tested, and we have to remove certain wrappings, certain things out of the way, and
Give me a
remove
for instance there, Yuri.
what?
Give me a for instance. What are you?
Oh,
Give
for
me a
instance,
nuts and
I can
bolts.
tell you, say, we don't need space police to restore law and order. We need to get our good police back, give them some money, and attract them back because they flock to other states.
What do you mean by space police?
No, like new ways of policing. Say we don't fight.
I see. Yeah.
We don't need extra drones. We don't need the electronic surveillance. We don't need
Oh.
our governor announced that she will have because there's enormous crime, like 40%, between 40 and 50% increase in crime, murders, robberies, rapes in the city, and a lot of it is happening on the subway, where a lot of homeless people, crazy people, criminals as well, they find shelter there, and
Mm-hmm.
the police cannot touch them. So she said we're going to install like 25 million cameras in next 5 years. So there will be security on the train, but it doesn't help.
There's a
Cameras.
problem. There's a problem with cameras, security cameras. They may identify that a crime has happened, but they can't jump off the wall and stop it from continuing. You have to have people there to separate the antagonists.
Yeah, or to prevent the whole
or
thing
even
from
or to
happening,
stop
because
it happening.
it's not normal with somebody is living in a subway car with 5 shopping carts with all his belongings, and he uses as a toilet and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he goes out and punches the. Imagine a conductor opens the window on the stop to see if the doors are opening, the doors are closing, and as soon as he opens the window, he gets punched in the face by a crazy man who's standing there.
Hmm.
Not crazy enough not to not to know where to stand to punch a conductor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the place where, I don't want to scare people, but a lot of people travel there. A lot of people say it's safe, but we get news. It's huge. It's huge.
So you don't use the subway much then?
Yeah, I try not to
Hmm.
as much as I can. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I find excuse not to go where I
Yeah.
need to go
Yeah.
by train, frankly. So yeah, so that's the thing here, and all those things they have to be dealt with conservatively, and of course with the with constitution, same thing, with education, same thing. We have structures in place. We have just to make them work again, and
Yeah.
they're quite dependable. They worked for many years. There's no reason that would not work. Suddenly stop working, but we were talking about. Cultural things, and one of the cultural things that I propose to talk about is Professor Jordan Peterson, a Canadian psychologist.
Oh,
And
just a minute, folks. Hang
yeah,
on. I want to tell everyone we've had our first row.
oh wow,
I, you're. Can I let the cat out the bag? You sent me an email saying I think Jordan Peterson's gone totally nuts. And I saw the whole interview and I said, no, I think he was being eminently reasonable. And it might have come to blows if we didn't have 4,000 miles between us.
no, absolutely no. I didn't have this feeling. That's the British way to look at it. It's from your side. In New York, it's okay. I mean, people go
That's all
crazy,
right.
of
I was
course.
exaggerating
Yeah,
somewhat.
I know. But it was. I look at things exactly the same way. Sorry, not exactly the same way. It's another exaggeration, but I look at things, almost always with the opportunity that I was misinterpreted sometimes and I
Yeah.
was misunderstood. But I have this little piece that we would like to discuss. We'll see how
Yeah.
technically how it will
Sure.
go technology wise.
Right.
But it's interesting. He's talking about. Russia and about Putin and his view as a psychologist. Shall we say a few words about who Jordan Peterson is? He's a Canadian professor who is a practitioner of psychology and somehow, I think, psychiatry to some extent, of course, because it's intertwined. But he became a very popular figure with his lectures when he successfully explained to a lot of multitudes of young people what life is and how they shall take their next step in life and how to look at life so life would be satisfying and they would get out of this circle into which the media is trying to wrangle them in modern life where there's no
One
way
of
but
his
yeah,
one
go
of
ahead.
his sort of, you might say, defining pieces of advice to especially young men is sort out your room before you try to sort out the world.
Yeah, which is pretty obvious, but not
Yeah.
in the young age.
No.
When you think that there are bigger problems than sorting out your room or cleaning your room, as we say here. So let's see. He went on Piers Morgan, and then his life kind of turned around when he became very famous. One, and second, he became such a big enemy of the left when they tried to get him ostracized, not disinvited to speak at the universities,
Mm-hmm.
and he developed. I learned that he has a pretty big collection of our social realist paintings.
Soviet art.
Soviet
Yeah.
art, yes, which is interesting. But I find it, after so many years of looking at it, I find it a little bit paranoid. And
Can I want to interrupt you here,
sure,
just something else about Peterson. He obviously feels things very deeply, very personally. And he said when he was a student, so I don't know whether he means when he was 16 or 20, but sometime around then, I believe that he had at least a transient episode of depression when he started studying what the Soviets were doing to each other in the early years of the Soviet Union. I'm sorry, just a minute. That would happen, wouldn't it?
It's a foghorn.
Yeah, right. That's my horse.
Okay.
And he got very depressed at knowing what cruelties had been perpetrated. And it was that set him on the route to studying why people go bad. All right, over to you.
Yeah. So this interview with Piers Morgan made the rounds, being released last week, I think this weekend. And before that, there was this clip available where he talks about Putin. And of course, Putin has made himself a big part of our lives today. For those who think about politics and look at the world outside their own countries, because those people would go, and think about things outside the daily lives, so to speak. So let's see how we can fare here with this.
Well, he's a lot more like everybody else than anyone thinks. You know, the notion that he's Hitler or Stalin, that's just foolish. I don't see any evidence for that at all. I mean, first of all, Hitler and Stalin were very singular types, and there's a bit of Hitler and Stalin in everyone. So, you know, there's some truth in that. Maybe there's more in the typical Russian leader.
A bit of Hitler in everyone? Really?
There's more than a bit.
Really?
So this is Jordan Peterson talking about Putin and comparing him with Hitler and Stalin. And he's saying that he's not. But I don't know that much about Hitler, but Stalin was a complete mediocrity in everything but, killing other people with most inventive ways. And he built a country that uploaded his efforts at philosophy and everything. There is not a shred of deep thought. Same thing with Lenin. He just thought that people are captive to listen to his outpourings of whatever he called philosophy, which was just a violent, vile, and cruel suggestions for building a new world. So that's where I disagree with him, because we disagreed with him with Jordan Peterson, because Putin is what evil is. The words of who said it? Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil. This is the today's representation, and it's very important.
But Yura, you see,
yes.
He started out, he's a KGB man, so obviously he had that propensity. But he started out getting Russia together. It wasn't evil to start with. It got more evil as he fell into that funnel and continued. He had no correction. And that's what happened with Stalin. That's what happens with any of these guys. They just get more and more, up their own fundaments, and nobody criticizes them, so there's no correction. That's what, you know what Mark Twain said about politicians, don't you? Politicians are like diapers, have to be changed regularly for the same reason.
Yeah.
And that's the problem now. So it's not so much Putin, of course, he's the spearhead of it. It's the people surrounding him. They found him convenient and then discovered that they were riding a tiger, but that was too late by that time.
Yes and no. I would agree with you. And I also know that there is some... and I'm not trying to rectify this understanding of... modern history, frankly. I talk against it, but I don't have hopes that people will change the views. And the thing with Putin is, first of all, he's a KGB man. Yes, to that, but his career in KGB was very, very unremarkable.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
get where he got by just doing nothing, just
He was a
finding
bureaucrat,
just to
really.
he was like a cultural section. I don't know how it transpires to in Western ranks, but his job was not spying. His job. He knew how it's done. He had friends over there, but he, from what I know, again, he was not the person who would go and connect the wires like Sean Connery style or the Doctor Evil style. Do like evil on the West. He was just being there, and he was not. He didn't have a remarkable career with KGB.
Hmm.
But he knew a lot of people went to work for in Soviet times. To work abroad was basically the only way to get legally rich if you're not or not rich but well heeled. If you are not a party leader or you don't risk your life working with the in other trades like having a store or something like that. But that's another story. So he's not a remarkable person, and Stalin was not a very remarkable person. But Stalin was, of course, much smarter because he was able to conceive operations and robberies and stuff like that, which again is not the job of a very sharp mind. But he was a very cunning criminal. And also later on, he was in his career, he was smart enough, but to invite the West to help him with industrialization, to help him with seeing where Russia can get the money, where Soviet Union can get the money, because he started selling gold with help of Arm & Hammer, the famous American philanthropist and capitalist, of course, and.
Do you know about the British government collusion with Russia in I suppose it was the 30s? There was the first Labour government, and they were importing timber from Russia.
No, I don't know the story.
Okay, so they were importing huge quantities of timber that were being harvested from Siberia with the use of slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly people like, the Crimean Tatars who were shipped out to Siberia.
Yeah, sure.
So they were set to work, and others like that were set to work cutting wood out in the most horrendous conditions. Sometimes they were just dropped in the forests with no shelter or anything. Well, a lot of them died, obviously. Some survived. Stories leaked out. There was one journalist who actually went there, saw what was going on, and he brought the story back to Britain, and questions were asked in the House of Commons, and the foreign minister or whatever, again, as I said, the new Labour government said, we know there may be something like, we know there may be abuses, but this is a great socialist experiment and we're going to continue buying timber from them.
Yeah,
so
it was, yeah.
This was, people were actually participating. They were actually helping this happen.
Yeah, this mental eclipse that we have this period of our history. I cannot treat it otherwise. And Jordan Peterson is speaking against it, of course, but it was. Of course, there was Walter Duranty, the British-born New York Times correspondent, Moscow correspondent for the Times, New York Times, and he was a big proponent of covering up Stalin's crimes. And of course, there was some government participation in it because there was also eventually a pro-communist. Davis is his last name, ambassador of the U.S. in Russia, and there was. I spent some time. I cannot recall the details, and it would lead us elsewhere if I did. But it's a very interesting story about the involvement of the West into getting the Soviet Union stronger and eventually what it has become. But that's one of the follies of human history that happens regularly. But back to Jordan Peterson. He's giving excuses. I think he's got this virus of thinking that Putin is somehow defending traditional values.
No, he isn't. He's saying that Putin isn't like Stalin, but he's not saying that he's defending anything. He's just saying he isn't as bad as Stalin was. Obviously, yet at the moment, Putin has been a singularly unlucky dictator, because when Hitler moved into Poland, he just took the tanks into, like, Czechoslovakia, rather. He just rolled it in. And what did our prime minister say? Why should we care about what's happening in a country far away of which we know nothing? And nobody did anything. If they'd have done then what what NATO's done now, then Hitler wouldn't have got anywhere. The millions of lives would have been saved. But that's just Putin's bad luck.
Well, the situation with then Czechoslovakia was very similar with what happened to Ukraine in 2014, when part of it just had voted to become part of Germany, Sudetenland, where they had a lot of ethnic German population. And they did the same trick in 2014. And a few days ago, they did it in Kherson area. That voted based on the referendum that they want to be part of Russia. Yeah. So
he's trying that, but it's not succeeding the way it succeeded. I mean, what Putin is doing is he's fighting an early 20th century or late 19th century war. And he thought he was going to win that, and he would have done in those days, but he's not going to do that now. I mean, whether they overpower Ukraine or not, this is not a war that Russia will win.
Yeah, the winning is. I think I don't like it when my. When on my programs we go. We talked about it before, but now I have to say to be suspicious of myself, and think that we talked about that before. Because if Putin wanted to take over Ukraine, he had enough money to do it bloodlessly. Absolutely, because both countries are corrupt, and it's easy to buy things, and there is a back and forth going right now. Certain things are still unexplained, and our side is trying to explain why the gas is still flowing across Ukraine, and why certain things that benefit Ukraine oligarchy and Russia oligarchy they still functioning. In spite of the war and all the blood and Bucha and all the other things that we see. But that's, again, requires certain, eyes on the ground that we particularly don't have. The media has it. Media doesn't give us the full picture. And I don't know if we can stomach the full picture. So we have our own kind of devices to take care of and to reset.
But back to Peterson.
Sure.
In what way do you think that that we are all like, that we all have that Stalin capacity? Do you disagree with that?
You see, it's just a new label on very old bottle. Of course, there's evil in all of us. Of course, some of us think that we can rule the world. I'm not from that category. I was very happy with my own little garden, digital or otherwise. And sometimes I want to be just left alone. I love to travel. I like to bother other people. But it's the propensity for evil is pretty much like ability to play instrument well, a musical instrument. It's just some people have more of it, some people have less of it. You can get there by training, you can get there by birth. It's just not for everybody. And when you think of certain things such as, that leads me, my train of thought, my pipeline of thought, I would say. It leads me to a pipeline, to the gas thing. Yesterday, we started talking just as a last part of my conversation with my friend, a professor of history in Memphis, Tennessee, University of Memphis, Tennessee. And I said, if you look at who benefits from the pipeline being blown up, the one that Nord Stream 2, to me, it's Putin again.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Because with the pipeline so obviously out of commission, I made a video about this. It's going, it's scheduled to go up at 3:00 my time. But with the pipeline out of commission, then he has got out of any contractual obligations he has to Germany. Germany can't legally sue for damages because he can say, well, the pipeline's broken and I can't repair it because I don't have the technology which you have denied me. So,
Yeah, because it was not built by Russian builders, this pipeline.
No.
It's a Swiss, big Swiss vessel that's laying pipes like that, and it was built in South Korea. So it's and if Americans did it, as Jordan Peterson may infer, or Tucker Carlson says straightly, and this video, by the way, was done before the pipeline, the Jordan Peterson video, but Tucker Carlson implies.
I just admit, I'm sorry, I do have to point something out there. In that very interview, when Piers Morgan asked him, well, what would Putin do? He said, well, I'd wait for the first cold snap and then I'd shut the pipeline down. And that's exactly what's happened. It shows you that Peterson really is inside Putin's head. He knows how he's acting. Right.
Yeah.
There you are. Go on.
And our president, current resident, they call him here, the resident.
The resident, that's good.
Yeah. he said, with his usual loose mouth, he said that we'll do something about it. It will never work. He issued some empty threats, and now everybody says that he was saying that the United States would do that, and so did Victoria Nuland, who said one way or another.
But that pipeline was out of commission anyway, so the explosion just means it can't be used again, probably.
Yeah, but the methane is coming out of it, and I don't know what do you think is ecological circumstances there? Is it so detrimental?
Well, it's a lot of methane. I'm giving the game away, but in my video, I envisaged a lot of divers going down with a big roll of duct tape to repair the thing, and a lot of dolphins looking suspiciously at each other when that smell of methane started.
Yeah.
No, I was. We don't know. It depends on how badly the pipe was damaged. Obviously, there's a lot of methane, but there's so much methane going into the atmosphere anyway that I'm not too sure it's going to be horrendous. It's just going to be disruptive. I'm quite sure that it will damage a few fish, though. But the Baltic Sea is basically an enclosed area, so I'm not sure exactly how dangerous the whole thing is.
Yeah, everybody should watch your video, please.
Everybody.
Subscribe to Granniopteryx. Let's try again with Jordan Peterson.
Go ahead.
Because there are some things that pop up in my mind as we speak that I didn't plan on speaking on before. Sorry. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. No. I don't know why this thing is not playing.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
there he goes.
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, why would have Nazism spread the way it did? People think, well, that's all top down. It's not top down. There's a part of people that are all these people who informed on Kate Berbelsing.
Well, didn't Goebbels say that the way to get vast numbers of people to go along with what you want to do is to terrify them?
Yeah, well, that you can do
hold
that.
a grip of terror over them.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we're
And
really
in a way,
scared.
that's what
Yeah,
Putin's now doing with the Russian
he's
people.
talking about this.
He's going back now into a position of they're all trying to get us, they want to attack us, they want to take us over. He's terrifying his people to rally support for what at the moment is a conflict he has started, which is not going the way he assumed.
Well, the most, what would you say, the wisest commentators on totalitarian states, like Solzhenitsyn, and many psychological commentators, Jung was a good example of that, made a very straightforward case that you can't have a totalitarian state unless every single person is willing to lie about everything all the time. And you can think about that as top down because the leaders lie too. And they also enforce punishments if you don't lie. But then you can also think about it. The totalitarian spirit is replicated at every level of the society. And so in a truly totalitarian state, husbands lie to their wives and parents lie to their children. And the totalitarian state is actually the grip of the lie.
I must say, as someone who witnessed the totalitarian state for 36 years of my life, that he was not, Jordan Peterson is not entirely wrong about saying it. But having lived in the United States for 25 years, I understand that fear is a normal, organic part of this society as well. And there's quite enough of lies. Of course, you can choose. The thing is, you can choose. You cannot choose in a totalitarian regime in Soviet Union. You cannot choose your life. But here you have your choices much wider. Again, it's not a free choice. It's an organized structure, so you cannot do as you wish many times in many circumstances. But
it's not you. In order to lie, you have to collaborate. You have to have at least a partial wish to collaborate. So I'm going to. You read the Gulag Archipelagos, didn't you? So there's one character there. Now I've forgotten all the names. It's a long time since I read it, but. One character had access to a radio and he was listening to what was going on in China. And when he told his colleagues the news, because they didn't know what was going on out there in their prison, he constantly, it says in the narrative, he gave the positive, like the progress the Chinese were making and that sort of thing. He gave that instead of all negative losses that were going on as well. Now, he was actually in prison for being politically incorrect, and yet he still felt that he couldn't tell his colleagues what was going on properly, only the good things. So here was a man who was an honest man, so honest that they had to lock him away, and yet he still couldn't tell the truth by omission. He didn't lie, but he lied by omission. So this is a good example of somebody who has been sold an ideal and is willing to compromise his soul in the service of that ideal. And as has been pointed out, the Hitler was not powerful on his own. He was powerful because the German people were behind him. Some of them more and some of them less, but still, they wanted him to lead them to this general ideal that they all had in their hearts. You need the backup of the people. I think one place where Putin is not so lucky is that he doesn't have that same backup in quite the same degree, as you can see from the queues, the exit queues that are developing right now.
And it's just the people got the, I think there is a difference, and if it offends somebody, I'll just take this offense in stride. But the difference between German people and people who live in Russia is significant.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
It's significant.
Yes.
Germans are pretty organized, and give them a good idea and they march to it.
Yeah.
Give them a reason. West is this way. Say all you want, but and it's a good and bad, but this feature is, but this is an organized society. Russia is not an organized society. It was never an organized society. The the things that Russia, or the Soviet Union, or Russian Federation has ever achieved is done by deception or violence in throughout the history. And deception includes imports of things like highest achievements of Soviet Union, where the industrialization without which Soviet Union wouldn't be able to resist anybody was imported, was bought from the United States. Most of the projects were built by American engineers. Then those engineers had either to leave or go to Gulag, and people who were friends with them and who were friends with those who were friends with them all went to Gulag as well, because they had the idea of how the thing came to existence. And then comes Lend-Lease, and then comes help from, before that there was saving Russia from hunger in 2021, thanks to Herbert Hoover, who became later president.
2021? You mean 1921?
Okay, 1921, of course. So yeah, I'm ensconced in this century.
Have you heard of the Asch experiment?
Which one?
The Asch, ASCH, the Asch experiment.
No.
So the Asch experiment, you probably have, you might not know it by its name. This university psychology department did a study. They had an actor sitting in a chair with electrodes attached. They weren't real. Mm-hmm. And then they got somebody in another room to deliver electric shocks whenever they answered a question wrong. The purported the reason for this experiment was how pain might improve learning. And so people they were being given instructions by a guy in a white coat with a clipboard, give an electric shock, give it at 1, 2, 3. And the man in the chair, the actor, would start off feeling uncomfortable and then say, oh, stop, I have a heart condition, you can't carry on. And the psychologist in the white coat would say to the operator, no, you've got to go on, we can't stop. This is, it's important that we fill this clipboard out. Mm-hmm. And these people did it. They went right up to, severe pain levels. And only in the experiment I read about, only one person, ironically enough, a German woman, she refused to do it when they got, but standing up against that guy with the white coat and the clipboard, turned out that almost everybody caved to that. And there was no compulsion. There was no compulsion at all. It was just an authority figure. Yeah. You've not heard of this?
No, here and there, but in its entirety, no.
I read it while I was at university, and I was absolutely horrified. The effect that had on me, I just sat there. I was stunned. Well, anyway, yeah. And when you see things like what's going on in Russia now, it seems to me to be a giant Asch experiment. And that's what Peterson is talking about, the fact that people will do these things if they get the right orders.
Yeah, but that came to an end with this announcement of partial mobilization. Yeah, and people who were singing "Uncle Vova, Vladimir, we're with you." Yesterday, today, they're lining up and filling out the airports, and the border with Finland is closed. And they built.
Is it closed now? I know Estonia closed it.
This morning they announced that it's closed, and they even built. A friend of mine yesterday told me that they built an office on the border with Georgia on the Russia side, where people who try to flee to Georgia, you can do it on foot, and on the road, of course. So they were stopped there, and they were given the papers to go serve. So you travel all those hundreds of thousands of kilometers to the border, where they greet you and meet you, and they give you the paper, go back and serve. Otherwise, you'll be put thrown in prison. And they also say that the other countries of former Soviet Union, they assured Russia that if Russia would require sending back those who fled to the countries, they would gladly do so.
Well, really?
Yeah, that's the thing. So
I know there's a guy called, he's got a channel called Inside Russia. And he did his hop 2 days ago, and he's in Tashkent now. So obviously Turkestan is still allowing people in. I don't know for how much longer.
No, I don't think it will stop allowing people in, but it depends on how Putin will develop his relationship with the rest of the world. If he says that if he chooses to his next victim, his next area of aggression somewhere in Central Asia, then it will send an unmistakable signal to the rest of the rulers over there. So they would comply, definitely. But it looks like with Ukraine, he has his hands full at the moment with because it's you don't even call it bad PR, with what's going on there. Let's try and see more of Jordan Peterson's, because that was the impetus, the inspiration for our conversation here. Hold on. I don't know why it doesn't start. What do you think?
And so, and people will certainly go along with that. I mean we're seeing that emerge here with cancel culture. It's like lie,
yes,
or else.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, well.
And the Russian people will be bombarded all the time with state media propaganda and will be buying into a lot of what Putin is saying.
Yeah.
Two things I would like to say that I said it before, that people in the West don't know the machinery. Piers Morgan mentions it there, Russian propaganda, but it's really the main driver of this whole thing. This is how it works. If you think that our media, our media, as malicious and foolish as it is, has nothing to do, has nothing on the Russian pointedness of this whole propaganda situation. It's hatred like 24/7, 365 on certain channels that people are conditioned to watch and love, and it's prime time, all the preferences given to them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's continue.
How does this war end, do you think?
We're going to find out this winter. Well, I know what I would do in his shoes. I'd wait till the first cold snap and shut off the taps.
Right.
Well,
because
of course he's going to do that.
He's got the control over the energy.
Of course he's going to do that. He's already warned the West with his insistence that maintenance problems were necessary and the pipelines had to be shut down.
Do you think he will use a nuclear weapon?
If necessary, he'll use a tactical battlefield weapon.
Even if it starts World War III?
It won't. Probably.
Why? Because
this tactical battlefield weapon is what they call a tell, don't you think?
Look, Peterson thinks he could use one. He thinks he's mad enough to use one. And I think he's mad enough to use one. The only hope I have is that the people who surround him are not mad enough to use one. And I just hope that there is some way that they can control this. But yeah, I'm quite sure. You see, Putin doesn't have any... You know what happens to people who are imprisoned in solitary confinement? They stop being able to talk to people because they've got so used to talking to themselves with no interruptions that they have trouble interacting with people anymore. And that's what's happening with Putin. He is basically in solitary confinement because even the people around him are just his puppets now. There's no bounce back in any way. So, yes, he has no boundaries. His boundaries are getting wider and wider. He has no sense anymore. I think, I don't know him personally, and I've not been in his bunker, but I think he is actually mad enough to do something really crazy like that. Yes, I do. I'm just hoping that there are other people around him who might finally decide that it takes two to push a button and they're not going to do the other half of it.
It takes more than two to push it. But I was talking about the choice of words, the tactical nuclear weapon.
There's no such thing. A nuclear weapon's a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and Peterson is kind of diminishing the significance of it, and he's saying it could be something less significant that the rest of the world thinks about it.
I don't think so. No, indeed, it could be a very small nuclear weapon that will just give a sort of Chernobyl type problem. But he's right that everybody's going to think twice about responding to something like that. And it's what you call salami tactics, isn't it? And they're going to be talking about cleaning up and protecting. And oh no, we don't want to start a nuclear war and make the war dirtier. I can see that rationalization. Look, frankly, I don't want to see more radiation either. So it's a serious moral problem there. And Putin's constantly stepping over the line. I mean, who would imagine? He promised not to invade Ukraine, and then he went into Ukraine. And then he said his troops were going to behave reasonably. And just look what they did. So
No, further on, it's interesting how Peterson characterizes victory and what he could be perceived as a victory. Let's go to the tape.
Yeah.
Wouldn't respond?
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it and get away with it, where does that end? Then you are into a Hitler analogy.
There's you can get yourself in a situation, no problem, where there's no good outcome. We're trying to do that right now on every front we can possibly imagine. We can easily get ourselves in a situation where it's hell this way and hell that way. That's highly probable.
Well, should the Ukrainians give the Russians anything? When I was over there recently interviewing President Zelensky, what I was struck by was everybody I met in Kyiv, the capital city, were utterly resolute. Don't give them an inch of our land.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to that because I don't know what the preconditions for peace might be. But I do know that naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win, I just don't understand. I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly?
Well, I guess a victory would be that the Russians retreated from Ukraine.
With Ukraine in ruins.
That's where
He's right. You've got to know he is right. But you know that thing about war. War is not a matter of who is right. It's a matter of what's left.
This thing, to me, he sounds like Neville Chamberlain 3.0 in this segment, frankly.
He's looking at it realistically, but sometimes realistically is not the way to look at things. However, that's not going nuts. He's being very realistic about the problem.
The thing is that what happened, I mean, why doesn't he say that all the ruins in Ukraine is the doing of Russian army and the Russian military strategy, quote unquote? Destroy everything, rape everybody, kill as many people as you can. They can't kill too many, and the body count on the Russian side is much higher than on the Ukrainian side, thanks to Ukrainian armed forces. But it's all done by Russians. They started stealing as soon as in 2014, when they got Donetsk, Lugansk, they started taking out the manufacturing facilities, stealing it into Russian territory.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened when they attacked in February this year, and they started stealing this and that, and they started destroying things. And the whole idea, okay, you want the territory. What do you want? You want people, you want slaves, you want the territory, you want the mines, you want the whales. What's the plan? No, they just straight out destroying things. Why? Because they thought, and it was I don't think it's far from the truth, that they were expecting they spent like $5 billion to on a project that would assure that people will greet them with their kids in tow, and with the flowers and cakes and that kind of thing. So they were not greeted at all, and they turned to plan B, which was break everything.
Yeah.
Very simple. So that was something that they continued doing up to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So Jordan Peterson saying that Russia wouldn't take Ukraine in ruins is wrong. He's wrong.
No,
they would take it in ruins. They would leave it in ruins.
What he is, well, the way my takeaway from what he said was that I don't agree entirely with him, but what I got from his conversation was that if Ukraine doesn't compromise on some parts of its land, then they can carry on fighting and they might win, but there'll be just dust and ashes left. And that's a realistic way of looking at it. Now, it's up to the Ukrainians to decide if they want to cede some of their land to Russia. And that's not a decision for us to make. It's how much they want to sacrifice, because they're the ones who are fighting.
Yeah, but
that's what I saw in what he said.
You see, on the one hand, living in the West for a long time, I understand the reasoning. I understand the give and take. But it's like somebody moves into your house, takes 5 rooms out of 10,
no, you're right,
and they say,
right.
okay, you want me to move out? I'll keep 2.
Yes.
That's the deal there. And
no, you're right.
You agree to that, or you disagree with that? That's the point. Of course, you can agree to that, but it's kind of doesn't preclude the possibility that the next day the person says, I changed my mind.
I want 3. Yeah.
I want 3, I want 5, I want everything. I want you out. And in New York, by the way, if you spend, I think 60 days, I forgot the laws here in the city, 60 days in somebody's apartment, you can claim that you have a right to kind of keep the cot or the corner of the room where you were invited to spend nights and days sometimes too. But in any case, that's the thing that's my problem with Jordan Peterson, because his idea of course, yes, you start with cleaning your own room and all, but eventually you advance, you graduate to big world problems, and they are like this. And with Putin, it's similar to that. If you let him have a finger, he will bite it.
Yeah, take the whole hand. I support the Ukraine war, and I will support whatever the Ukrainians decide to do. But that doesn't stop me from realizing that there is a logical counter-argument. And Peterson is giving that. He's not gone nuts. He's just being realistic. And then you have to say, well, look, there's this risk, there's this problem. Am I going to go for the logic or go with my heart? Basically, am I going to think the Russians aren't going to be trustworthy enough to just stick to a little bit of territory or not? I understand the Russian drive to keep Crimea, for instance. I don't think they should, but I understand, because that's their access to the Black Sea. The big problem in Russia is warm water ports, isn't it? That Stalin was discussing that with Truman. So I know why Russia is doing it, and I know why they've sunk their teeth in like this, and so do the people in Ukraine. And they have to weigh up, how much this fight is worth. But that's not our decision, that's their decision. And Peterson is not going mad by pointing that out.
Okay, maybe it was my my exaggeration when I said he's going mad, but we'll get back to that. It's an evening topic for me.
Yeah.
This whole thing. In the morning, it's something else. But I just wanted to say that what I want to say that with his lectern that he has, like global influence, and he's a global figure. He would. I think would do I mean, there is like a media self-servicing on his behalf, in my opinion. He's became he was always there is an element of showmanship, of course.
Yes.
Always, right?
Yes.
And we
yes.
even we agree on that.
Oh, absolutely.
We feel it sometimes if they try to get it better at it sometimes, but we don't forget the ideas for which why we here. But Peterson, I would say, with his influence, with his authority, he should draw attention to the ways that this war can be won, because that's weak to talk about why we're losing and how we can lose more gracefully, and what's the best way to lose the war. It's not it's against everything he spoke out prior. It's against everything. You talk about how you win. You don't talk about how you lose.
That's yes, I agree with that. But I think he was being realistic anyway.
That's the refuge, of course, of those who would like to discuss a graceful way of losing.
Yeah.
That's realistic. Is nothing realistic about the existence of the state of Israel. That's nothing realistic. There's no chance. It's like Nabokov once said that this world has as much chances to survive as an eggshell under the feet of a marching army. That's how history moves.
I know General Montgomery said that Israel couldn't support more than 1 million people.
Yeah. So that's the thing, and then there was 90 people against it, 90 million people against Israel, Arab countries. Still there, and it's a good country. A lot of people from Russia running to Israel since February 24.
Yes, and I can imagine. Yes,
that's how it goes. So there are so many surprises in world history, and I wish Jordan Peterson to become my favorite Peterson again. Now Oscar Peterson.
He doesn't. What I think he's worried about is just warmongering. Whipping up for no reason. And I in his position, he's because the whole thing. We're all for Ukraine. I think he's offering some balance. And although I don't agree with him. I think it's a cautionary will. Don't get too carried away by this.
Yeah, in his case, it's like a messenger is the medium is the message, right? So he's the way he talks about it, the way he comes across as a concerned philosopher and person who sees the way of action, and he used to bring good recipes for the future. I still look at him with great hope because I think he's one of the best out there, and it's something that needs to be figured out. Tucker Carlson is also a commander who talks a lot about Ukraine being corrupt and not deserving.
I'm very disappointed in Tucker Carlson.
A lot of people are, and politically he makes my work so hard. And I see it because before he started this turn, I don't know what started him on this path. Probably it's something that he thinks that he's a visionary who can predict the future and set the trends and set movements. And also everybody's afraid that victory, whatever they would call it, the positive outcome of the war in Ukraine would affect positively the Democrat Party's chances to win in midterms this year and in presidency 2 years later. So probably this is some sort of a coordinated effort, anti-Ukraine coordinated effort. And I think that we should look at the world that was open with both eyes open. That's easier to say than do, of course.
Yes.
Demi, thank you so very much. It was very productive hour, and I apologize for my muddled English. I just
wonderful.
speak Russian too much.
The English are always so pathetically grateful when anyone speaks English instead of forcing them to learn their language.
You don't know how grateful I am traveling in Europe sometimes then that people speak English. Russian is out of the question so far. All right, everybody, thank you. Have a great day. And Demi, hope to meet you again in the same space.
It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.